Hi, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome to another episode of Fox Talks. Tonight's guest is Wakefield Chief of Police, Stephen Skory. How are you doing tonight, Chief?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for being with us tonight. Know you're a busy guy, so I'm glad you can make some time for this.
My pleasure.
So tonight's kind of like a get to know our chief kind of night in our police department and the responsibilities of chief and anything else you want to add. So I guess the first thing I'd say is, what led you to becoming a police officer? Was it a lifelong dream or just happened?
I really can't put a finger on it. I know that, as a kid, I saw a lot of police officers. I knew a couple of police officers, and I guess at some point they must have had an influence on me because, when I graduated high school and it came time to pick a major for college, criminal justice just kind of jumped out at me. And once I started taking the college classes, I really got into it. And I think just the idea of being really involved in the community and having the opportunity to help people is what really attracted me to the job.
So you went to school for it. You have a master's in criminal justice, bachelor's in criminal justice. What led you to pursue that further? You just really enjoyed getting the bachelor's, or were you already working as an officer at the time?
No, right out of high school, I went to Northeastern for my bachelor's degree. And while I was at Northeastern, I had the opportunity to do Northeastern has a co-op program. Mm-hmm. So you spend some time in school, you spend some time working in the field that you're majoring in. So I had the unique opportunity to work for the U.S. Marshal Service for my co-op job when I was at Northeastern. And I went to Newark, New Jersey for 6 months, came back to school for 6 months, and then went to Newark, New Jersey for another 6 months to work with the Marshal Service. So interestingly enough, if you work with the federal agency throughout the co-op program, the idea is that once you graduate, you go right back to working for that agency, and that's your career. So originally, once I graduated Northeastern, I was supposed to go right back to the U.S. Marshal Service, and I would have spent my career with them. But I graduated in 1993, and in 1993, the federal government froze all hiring. So when I graduated, the job that I thought I had lined up was no longer there for me. So I had to pursue other avenues, and that's how I got into municipal policing.
So where was your first job?
My first job, I worked part-time.
Non-martial job.
So when I graduated, it was very tough to get a police job. There were a lot of people that were trying to get into the field. The state police weren't giving an exam. The state of Massachusetts was in some financial disarray. The civil service exam wasn't offered, so I started to have to look at non-civil service departments. And originally, I started as a part-time officer working in 3 different departments at the same time. So I was like a full-time, part-time police officer. I worked in Hampton, New Hampshire. I worked in Topsfield, Massachusetts, and Middleton, Massachusetts at the same time as a reserve officer. And then eventually, I got hired full-time in the town of Middleton. And I worked there from 1994 until 2000. And then in July 5th of 2000, I started my career in Wakefield.
So how do you keep all that straight as a reserve officer for 3 towns at the same time?
It's not easy. So what you do is you keep a schedule book. You keep your uniforms organized. You have to make sure that you bring the right equipment to work because everything's issued. It wasn't easy. I would often go from, I might work a day shift in one town and then say go work a 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift in Hampton. So there was some very long days, some very long nights, and a lot of confusion. But I did it because it was my passion, and I really wanted to get into the field. And at the time, if that's how you wanted to get into law enforcement, that was what you had to do. And I really enjoyed it. I met a lot of different people. I worked with a lot of different officers. I learned everything. I learned something from everybody I worked with. And I think that's it really helped me later on in my career, having worked with so many different people. And having worked with different organizations, I worked with different chiefs who had different leadership styles. I worked with different supervisors who had different supervision skills. And I took something away from every one of them. There were things I liked, things I didn't like. And you just kind of tuck those away for later on in life. And you remember to yourself, maybe I'll use this one later because I like it. Maybe I won't use that because I didn't really care for it. So it really, it was an advantage to me. It was a hardship to begin with, but I think in the long term, it really paid off because it gave me so much of a diverse experience of working with so many different people.
And then when you got the full-time job, you said you're working in Middleton.
Correct.
How was that transition going from kind of jumping around and finding your home
it was, it really slowed things down because I didn't have to worry about what town I was supposed to be in and what time. I had a set schedule. And I enjoyed my time there. You know, it's just, it's a small department. They only had 11 officers at the time. And I really wanted to broaden my career and go somewhere that had more to offer. And I was living in Wakefield. Yeah, I took the civil service exam to become a Wakefield police officer. And fortunately, I had the opportunity to make the jump. And it wasn't an easy decision. You know, I was 30 years old at the time. And switching jobs at 30, it can be a little nerve-wracking. And I remember I took out a piece of paper and I made a list of reasons to leave my current job and reasons to stay. And bottom line was there were more reasons to leave. And I looked at the opportunity that Wakefield presented. And as a little kid, my grandparents lived in Wakefield. I spent a lot of time with them. And we were always down the lake and we always talked about police officers. And I knew that my grandmother would be really excited if I worked in the town that she lived in. So it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And I got to be honest with you, thank God I didn't pass it up because it's been the best thing that ever happened.
So how long have you been in Wakefield as an officer now?
It was 20 years on July 5th. So exactly 20 years in a month today.
I guess it all worked out then.
It did.
You are. You may not have had that career you were looking for in Middleton, but you've obviously been able to build something in Wakefield after coming here. So
yeah, it's been great experience. You know, I can't really say I've had a bad experience here. A lot of opportunity for me. I've been able to participate in different units. I was on the motorcycle unit. I was part of NEMLEC, which is the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. I've been on the regional response team. I've been on the incident management team. I've had the opportunity after the Boston Marathon bombing. I was in Boston for 6 days. Helping with that. I went up to Lawrence for the gas explosions up there. I was there for a week. A lot of unique opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And with each one of those comes a learning experience, something that I can take back to the Wakefield PD. I served as a sergeant, lieutenant. I've had the opportunity to serve at every rank. I've learned something at every rank. Just a great experience.
Are you still able to be involved in organizations like the Incident Management Group or DEMLEC as a chief, or is that more for the lower ranking officers?
Every chief in the NEMLEC region, there's 54 cities and towns and 2 sheriff's departments involved with NEMLEC. So we have a monthly chiefs meeting where we talk about the various units within NEMLEC. There's a lot of organization that goes in with that. Each town has to participate with a certain percentage of their department in the various units. So as a chief, yes, I still participate, but at a different level. We have, correct. So I had to leave the incident management team, of course. I enjoyed my time there. I learned a tremendous amount. We dealt with obviously some big incidents, and to manage that kind of manpower and the resources and the equipment that you need, it can be overwhelming at times, but you just kind of buckle down and deal with it. The response to Lawrence, I remember driving up there an hour after the explosion started and just seeing a sea of red fire engines and police cars. And how do you organize all that? We managed to do it. Somehow we did it. I'm not sure how we did it, but we did it. And we managed to do it for a whole week. So it was interesting.
What kind of training does it take to become a chief? I know that you talked about the civil service exam, become an officer. Is there a test you take to become a chief, or is it kind of something you're groomed into when you're already working in the department?
So some towns that are civil service, the chief's position is a civil service chief's position. Years ago, the town of Wakefield voted to take the chief's position out of civil service. So I had the opportunity once Chief Smith had to retire because of his age. And so getting close to his retirement, I had the opportunity to interview with Town Administrator Steve Mayo, and we had a great conversation. We talked about the current state of the department, what my vision was for the future of the department, and apparently the conversation went pretty well because he had the confidence to pick me for the job. As far as training goes, it's really an accumulation of your education, your experience, and your training. There's no set course for becoming a chief. It's really all the skills and knowledge you gain throughout your career. And of course, I served as a sergeant, lieutenant. I had different roles in each one of those supervisory positions. that kind of helped me prepare for the chief's job. I did have the opportunity to go to the FBI National Academy back in 2014. And what that is that's a 10-week course at the FBI Academy down in Quantico, Virginia. And it's for police leaders. It's a leadership course. And it's pretty tough to get into. There's only 4 sessions per year. They only take about 200 people per session. And it's police leaders from all over the country and all over the world. So there were 210 officers in my session, all over the country, and represented by 39 different countries. So it was a phenomenal opportunity to get some great training and to hear the experiences of senior leadership from around the country, the different things that they've dealt with. Talking to, you had some major departments represented there, the NYPD, LAPD, Miami-Dade, and just hearing how they dealt with certain issues. It was interesting to hear that some of the issues that big, small, medium-sized departments deal with can be the same. Hiring and retention now is a huge issue in every department. The number of people that are applying to police departments is way down compared to what it was 20 years ago. And that's a major issue. How do we fill jobs? You want to hire the best candidates possible. Your pool of applicants continues to diminish every year. How do you fix that? So we brainstormed that, but it was just interesting to hear that that problem exists everywhere. It's not just unique to one area of the country or just one department.
It's funny you mentioned that. When I was in college, they would often have flyers up for the New York City Police Department to try and draw recruits in. So I never really thought about that aspect of it. It was difficult everywhere. I mean, I imagine in New York, the size of the city, that you need a lot of officers, but I didn't know that was even happening in town for that matter. Sure.
Well, NYPD has 39,000 officers. Not sure how you keep track of that many people. Can't be easy. But I can tell you, like when I took the civil service exam back in 1998, I took it up at the vocational school on Hemlock Road, and the line to get into the building went down Hemlock Road. That's how many people took the exam. And back then, if you weren't in the top 4 on the exam, you probably weren't going to get hired. This last exam was in 2019, and we had 29 Wakefield residents that took and passed the exam. And we have residence preference in Wakefield. So that was the pool of candidates that we have, 29 people. It used to be in the hundreds. Now we're down to 29. So trying to brainstorm, how can we get the numbers up? The next exam should be scheduled for this coming year, 2021. I checked the state's website the other day. The exam hasn't been announced yet. It's probably a little too early, but we're going to look at advertising in the local paper, advertising on social media. We need more people to go out and take the exam. Of course, we want to replicate the community. We want to reflect the community. So we want a more diverse group taking the exam. One of the things we really want to get going, and we've been working on it, we're trying to get it started in the spring, but of course COVID hit and everything just everything hit the brakes, is we want to get a cadet program going at the high school. We really want to get high school age kids interested in the law enforcement profession so that when they graduate high school, they pursue criminal justice in college, come back, take the civil service exam, and we get some good applicants that are taking the exam.
I know it comes up frequently about the diversity of the police department in town, but you're saying that you have to take a test to become an officer. So it's not like you're, let's say, discriminating against anybody. It's more if you only have 29 applicants, you have to pick from that pool, and then depending how they do, I assume that they those candidates took the test would then go on to the Academy of Picks, which further narrows things down for you. So it makes it really difficult to get the members you're looking for.
It's extremely difficult. So let me give you kind of like a brief explanation of how civil service works. So we have residence preference. So any Wakefield resident who takes and passes the exam will go to the top of the list. All those people, those Wakefield residents, are there ranked by their test score. At the top of the list are the veterans. So say we were hiring 3 people. There's a formula that civil service uses. When I call them and say, hey, I'm hiring 3 people, I need a list, there's a formula they use for the number of names that they send me. And the formula is 2 + 1. So for every position that I hire, they'll send me 2 names plus 1. So if I say I'm hiring 3, they'll send me the top 7 names on the list. and I have to hire within those 7 names. If I don't find a candidate that works for the Wakefield Police Department, I have to bypass them, and I have to justify that with a reason as to why I'm bypassing them to move on later in the list. The person who's bypassing has the right to appeal to civil service. So it's a difficult process. There's not a lot of freedom of movement within that list. You're very restricted as to who you can hire. So we're limited to the names that they send us.
And if you're not getting a lot of applicants, this makes it even harder for you.
Correct. But one thing I am proud of is that when I started with the department, we didn't have any female officers, and we have 4 now. We have a 5th that just started the academy last week. So that's a big deal, because you know what? 50% of our population is probably female. So are we diversifying? Yeah, we are. You know, we're increasing the number of female representatives on the police department.
So how long will it take for your new officer to get through the training before they become a police officer?
So the academy is 22 or 23 weeks, depending on how many holidays fall within the academy period. And then once they graduate, we have a 12-week in-house training program where the officer has to learn our policies, our rules and regulations, our mission statement. They have to learn our computer system. They spend time riding around with other officers to see how we operate, proper radio procedure, cruiser operation, all that. And then once we feel that, and we do reviews within that 12-week period, once we feel that the new hire is ready to go on their own, we'll send them out on their own. They're still on probation for 1 year. And we do reviews for that first year, and we monitor their progress. And if we think they need some remedial training, we'll give them remedial training, because we want to put the best product that we can out on the street for the residents of Wakefield.
So your next test coming up, how many officers do you think you'll be going for at that time? Do you have? I know you're limited in space, probably budgetary, building size, what have you. But do you try to get new recruits every test period, or?
Well, I would hope we don't have to hire any. When these 3 that started the academy on Monday graduate, as long as nobody else retires or leaves to go into the private sector, we'll be fully staffed for the first time in a long time. And I hope to stay that way for a while. It's tough to lose experienced officers because of all the institutional knowledge that they take with them. And it really takes a new officer, I would say 5 years to be comfortable on the street. There's a lot you need to know. You pretty much need to be a lawyer without carrying around a law book in your back pocket. And the laws change all the time. It's not easy. So to really have a good grasp of the job takes probably a good 5 years. So to lose experienced people is tough. And the last thing you want is people who have just a few years of experience training new hires. You want those experienced officers around so you can put the new hires with them and they can pass on their knowledge. So I'm hoping nobody leaves. We have a couple of people that are retirement eligible. I don't think they plan on leaving. Nobody else is going to be retirement eligible for some time. We have had a few people leave to go to the state police in the last couple of years. The reason being that they have all the cool stuff that we don't have. They have horses and helicopters and all kinds of nifty gadgets that we can't offer, but it is what it is. I just hope that nobody leaves. We have a good department. We have people that get along. They work well together. We're a good team. And police work is a profession that probably closest resembles a team. You know, we have to work with as a team. Nobody can do this job alone. And so you have to have good teammates. And the way I look at the department now is we have a department full of good teammates, and I'd like to keep it that way.
Is retention an issue for people leaving to the private sector, or is it more transitioning to other departments?
More transition to other departments. In the past, we had one officer who left maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little longer, to go to Cambridge. Cambridge is obviously a bigger department, 300 officers. I think we've lost 5 to the state police. We did lose 1 person to the private sector. Not that they lost interest in police work, but they had another profession and they were doing well at it and just chose to go in that direction, and I can't blame them.
I can understand certainly the time commitment. If you're an officer, you're working holidays, you're working nights and weekends. I mean, there's a lot of jobs you could do for similar pay that don't involve that commitment. So I really respect those who are stepping up to take on those duties, because I know I don't want to do it. So I'm glad
It's
you are willing to do it.
it's not easy, and until you've done it, you really don't understand it. Just all the Christmas Eve parties that I missed, and New Year's parties, and not being there on Christmas morning, and you miss birthday parties, and people don't. For instance, your friends call you and they say, "Hey, we're getting together on such and such," and so I have to work. They don't understand that when you go to work at midnight, that you don't stay up for days. At some point, you have to sleep. You have to take a nap before you go into work, and it really takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on the family life, and so that's why you need a strong family too. You need to have a family that supports your decision to do this job. I didn't have kids when I started. Eventually, I had kids. That was their normal. You know, we talked about this new normal of COVID. My kids' normal was dad's at work again. Dad's going in for midnight. Dad had to stay for a day shift. Dad has to go to court tomorrow. Dad has to go do this. It was tough. I got to tell you, there's a lot of days, nights that I felt guilty that I wasn't there for things. But my family accepted it for what it is, and I'm grateful for that, because without that kind of support at home, it's very tough for somebody to do this job.
How has that aspect changed now that you're chief? Is it more of a day schedule? I mean, I'm sure you're on call 24 hours a day, but it's primarily you're in the office, like a 9 to 5 job now?
Yeah, I try to get in around anywhere between 6:30 and 7 in the morning, and typically I'm there probably almost till 5 in the afternoon. It just seems like you get one thing done and then something else comes across in an email or gets, put on top of the desk. And it's a busy job, but it's nice because the time goes by fast. I enjoy it. I really do. It's like, it's almost like a sport for me. So it's, the newness of it hasn't worn off yet. I enjoy it. I enjoy every day. Every once in a while, I still try to get out there and help the officers to show them that the old guy still has it a little bit. And that's kind of fun. But, the biggest change for me is my personal life is that now I'm home at night for the first time in 20-something years. And I think it took my kids a little adjusting to get used to. Dad's home. We got to do homework. Dad's home. Always making us do this and that and the other thing. But it's all good. It really is good.
What do you miss most about just being a regular officer?
Everything. Loved it. Best job in the world. Just being out there. It's amazing what you learn about human behavior. If you and I were to walk down the street together and just look around, we would see two completely different things. And that's, I always used to refer to myself as a social engineer. I understood society. When you work midnight shifts, you learn who's up late, who leaves their TV on. You learn what time people's newspapers get delivered, what time they get up for work. A lot of different things. The people of the community. Somebody driving through Wakefield might say, "Oh my God, look at that." And I look at that and say, "Yeah, that's normal." I might look at something you don't think is a big deal, and I say, "That's not normal." So as police officers, you just kind of train yourself to look for things that don't look right. And sooner or later, you recognize those. And I just getting to deal with people, help people, loved it. Loved every minute of it. It was, it's never the same. It's not an office job. It's not like working in a cubicle where you're looking at the same four walls all day. Your office is a four-wheeled platform that moves around town, and you get 7 square miles to patrol, and it's never the same. It's always different. When you think you've seen it all, somebody will prove you wrong.
And one thing you had mentioned was the working on holidays and that part. So when I talked to you a little while ago, you said this is the first time in 20 years you had the 4th of July off because there were no parade, there was no fireworks, and all those activities that normally take place in town.
Right.
That you used to organize the officers to be a part of. So when the decision was made by the town council in March or April to cancel the events, it was due to your ability to find officers or fire departments, EMT, whatever the need is. So what goes into planning events like that from your perspective as the person that did all that organizing?
Yeah, so I did it for 7 years. That was one of my main responsibilities as a lieutenant. And when I first took it over, it was pretty involved. Had a lot to learn, but it became more involved every year because what I started to do was I looked at world events. I looked at events around the country. The biggest event that changed the way I prepared for the 4th of July was the marathon bombings. We have, obviously, you're an organizer of the parade. How many people show up, line the streets of Wakefield? How many people show up and congregate in a confined area for the fireworks? I got to tell you, I'll be honest, I stressed about it every year. Every year I would try to just brainstorm, what can I do to make it safer this year? What can I do to make it better? Knowing that I had that many people coming in one day and one time in one place. Let's just get through this day. Let's do it safe and get everybody home. And so I tried to add things every year that I thought would help. Just a few small examples is one year there was an issue with people in kayaks and canoes out on the lake during the fireworks, getting too close to the fireworks barge. So to combat that problem, every year I borrowed a boat from the sheriff's department, and I put 2 officers on the boat, and their responsibility was to keep people away from the fireworks. So little things like that. I really became concerned after the marathon event with bombs, explosives. So I started to bring in bomb disposal units and bomb sniffing dogs. And I really wasn't sure the first time I did it how people would react. I didn't know if they would react in a negative way, but people loved it. They saw the dogs out there. They saw the officers. They had federal officers, they had state police officers, bomb sniffing dogs, and it was a good reaction. And I was actually happy with that. The people respected the fact that we were going the extra step to make sure that they had a safe day here in Wakefield. But I have to tell you, it was very strange this year not having the 4th. I woke up, at first I was excited. I'm like, oh, it's the first time in 20 years I don't have to work the 4th of July. And but every year I'd stress in the morning that I forgot something, that I do everything, that I forget anything. And this year I woke up doing the same thing. And I'm saying, I don't have to be there. But I still felt like I hadn't done something to prepare for the day. So it was a very strange feeling this year.
Well, hopefully we'll be doing all that stuff again next year, and whoever you assign to those tasks and take on those worries that you've had for all these years.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we're back next year. It's good for Wakefield. It's a great day. I just miss not having it. It's good to have it, so we need it back.
How has being an officer been during the pandemic? I mean, I've seen some of your officers around town. They have their masks on. Some are wearing gloves. Normally I would go say hi to them, but I kind of stay away now because I don't want to, bother them or get close. So how's that changed for them?
So very tough for them. Obviously, a lot of them have small children at home. Nobody wants to get sick. It's really had an effect on our daily operations, how we operate internally and externally. So when COVID first really started to grow, I had to create an operations plan on the what ifs. What if half our department gets sick? What if our command staff gets sick? Who takes over? What's the contingency plan for scheduling? So then I came out with a lot of special orders to try and limit people's exposure, try and minimize any potential for people getting sick. And a couple of small things as an example is we limited the number of people who could share a cruiser. At the beginning of every shift, we provide disinfecting wipes and disinfecting spray. So at the beginning of the shift, you wipe the interior of the car down, you spray it down. You do the same thing at the end of the shift. We put a temporary ban on in-person roll calls. We were doing roll call electronically. Roll call room is very small. We couldn't have everybody confined in a small space. So we did away with that. A lot of things we do remotely through electronic communications. As COVID's kind of slowing down, we're trying to get back to normal operations, just as it's stressful for people, for people that had to come home from work and kids out of school. It's been stressful for them. And it's the same thing for our officers, not operating the way we normally did. It's very stressful. So we're slowly trying to get back to normal operations, but we can't fully do that. The officers still have to wear a mask. Some are very diligent about wearing gloves. We don't transport prisoners in the cruisers anymore. Temporarily, we're using the prisoner wagon for all transports because if somebody is sick, it's very expensive to get the cruisers disinfected after every transport. So we use the van. Small things like that. I could go on and on, but the goal was to keep our department healthy. We couldn't afford to have the department decimated with illness. We've been very fortunate. I'm knocking on wood here. We haven't had a single case of COVID within the department. And I really believe that's because of the precautions we took with the disinfecting materials and the personal protective equipment that the officers have used. They've been religious about using the stuff, and I have to give them kudos for that.
Have you found a decrease in crime with everything going on, or is it still?
So it went exactly the way I expected it. The first 3 weeks of the stay-at-home order, very quiet. But what I knew was that after 3 weeks of everybody being home, people being laid off from work, financial trouble starting to hit, I knew that there would be an uptick, especially in domestic calls. They didn't go up as much as I thought they would. And the biggest issue was alcohol. People were at home. Liquor stores were deemed essential, which was probably not the best thing. People started to drink a lot more. We had a lot more of disorderly incidents. So that was how I expected it to go, and that's pretty much the way it went.
Yeah, I'm sure that makes things a little tougher. One thing I noticed on the news is you weren't seeing a lot of stories involving crime because, like you said, people were locked down. So it kind of limited, if you're someone who would normally rob a store, there weren't a lot of stores open. So didn't have those worries.
No. And I will tell you that we have a lot fewer overdoses so far this year. I don't know if that's because of the good work that the department's doing or just the COVID had an effect on that. But we've had about half as many this year as we had last year at this point. So I'd like to attribute it to the good work of the police department, but maybe COVID had a little bit to do with it.
With regard to drugs, I know that Wakefield has a counselor that is on site. You also have your family resource officer. So if someone had come to you and said that they had a problem or for a relative, what's the process that would take place?
So the team that we use is the family services officer, who is Amy Rando. We have a mental health clinician, which is Jen Wachowski, and then we have a recovery coach, which is Tracy Uscalillo. So if the person who has the addiction comes to us for help, it's great. They can sit down with the person, discuss the issue, try and find what might be the best facility for them if they're looking for in-house treatment. We've done that in many cases. We've got people to detoxes. Had some success cases, been some relapses that happens. But they do the majority of the work with them. If it's a case where maybe a relative comes in and they say, we have whoever in the family has an addiction, they refuse to get help. We'll help the people with the court process. It's called a Section 35. We'll help them down at court, get a court order that then we go out. Once the order is issued, we pick the person up, we bring them directly to court, and the court will court order them into some kind of treatment facility. So we do our best to get people into treatment. Tracy and Jen, very good about finding facilities that will take people. As you can imagine, a lot of the times they're full. So we'll have to find someplace maybe not so close. We've also partnered with a company that's free of charge that will drive somebody anywhere in the state to a treatment facility, free of cost. So we call them up, and wherever they need to go, car will be there in 10 minutes, and we'll put them in the car and off they go.
Are you finding that people are willing to come to you, or is it more you've had an interaction with them with something unrelated that kind of brings them to your attention?
Usually, we do have some people that come in on their own. Jen and Tracy and Amy have built great relationships with people. There's people that come in that stay clean and they want to thank them for all the help. Some people have relapses and they'll come in and say, I need help again. They're not afraid to come to us. People are not afraid to come into the police station. We're not putting handcuffs on people that come in for help. That's just not going to happen. that's not we're looking for the long-term solution, and the long-term solution is to get people treatment. A lot of our interactions, unfortunately, begin with an overdose. We'll respond to a resident for an overdose, or there's a lot of people that overdose in cars. I think more than half of our overdoses that have occurred in town this year aren't Wakefield residents. They're people who are driving through town, staying in a friend's house. So that's how it usually starts. And we respond. All our officers are trained in using Narcan. So we have the initial response by the officers. They'll follow up. A detective will follow up with them. A mental health clinician will follow up. They probably get tired of hearing from us because there's so much follow-up. Once you get rid of one of us, all of a sudden there's another one standing there asking if you need help with something. So we're very persistent, and some people flat out refuse to help the first couple of times. But as they get deeper and deeper into the addiction and they realize how bad off they are, a lot of them come around and say, you know what, the time has come, I need help. And the only time you can really help somebody is when they realize that. You can tell somebody till you're blue in the face, hey, you need help. And if they don't want to believe it, they're not going to seek the help. But once they hit rock bottom and they come around, they come knocking and say, well, you remember that help you offered me? I'm ready now. So, and when they're ready, we're ready.
What are the other tasks that team takes on? So Amy with family health services and
a lot. Amy does all the follow-up for any kind of domestic incident. And, domestics are very complicated. They involve addiction. They involve mental illness. So they can be tricky. And that's where Jen comes in. She's our mental health clinician. As everybody knows, we have a good population of people who suffer from mental illness. And we have a number of DMH homes. So we have some people who are clients of the Department of Mental Health here in Wakefield. And as long as people are on their medications, they're good. And sometimes they go off their medications. But mental illness is also an effect of alcohol and drug abuse. So that all goes hand in hand. Homelessness, that goes hand in hand with all of that. So they work on all of that, whether it's addiction, drug use, alcoholism, homelessness, mental health. They do it all. They really do. They do all of it. And all of our officers, almost all of our officers are trained in crisis intervention. We call it CIT. So they're part of that team also. If you've been listening to what's been going on around the country, defund the police, put the money into social services. Well, we are social services. I think we kind of set the bar with that. Our officers are trained in crisis intervention. We have a mental health clinician, and now we are the go-to agency for that. And just like trying to get help for people who have addiction, mental illness is the same thing. It's tough. It's not easy. It usually takes 2 or 3 tries, but we're very persistent. We just keep going at it.
I know one of the reasons for the push for the new public safety building enhancements was to have the office space like that. So first, I should congratulate you. It looks like you're going to get the needed upgrades. It's still in that appeal time period, but it looks like it's a go. So what do you think the biggest effect it will be for your staff to have the upgrades?
There's a lot. First of all, not just for our staff, but the people who come to us to do business. When the building is done, they'll be able to walk in the lobby, and if it's during the day, the records office will be on their left if they need a report. Dispatch will be straight ahead. You'll be able to see a real person in the lobby. And if you come in now, it's only during business hours, during the weekdays that you'll see a person. So that's the biggest improvement overall. Is we need to provide a better service to the community. And it starts with having a real person in the lobby to greet somebody who needs help. So that's a bonus to the public. As far as records goes, having evidence on the same floor. Right now, our records department is in the lobby. Evidence is on the 3rd floor. Our records department prepares cases for court. They take in evidence that's brought in previous shifts. They have to organize it. They have to log it. And they're constantly up and down the stairs, back and forth. And it just logistically, it doesn't make sense. So that will all be on the same floor. Logistically, the building will make a lot more sense when it's done. You'll have the patrol operations. You'll have the detectives. You'll have family services, the mental health clinician, and the recovery coach all working on the same floor. They all work together. As it is now, they're spread all over the building. Some work in converted closets, some have offices on the third floor. There's no rhyme or reason to the way the building is designed right now. And logistically, it's going to make a lot more sense. People will work together, will be together. The command staff will be on the third floor. Myself, the deputy chief, the lieutenants, we all work together. The sergeants will have an office on the third floor. As it is now, they don't have space for some of their materials that they use. All our sergeants have extra duties in addition to patrol. There's no storage areas. There's no area for file cabinets. They'll have all that. So we're finally going to have what we need, and we'll have space for the future. Things will grow. It's going to happen. I can't tell you how, because if you had told me 20 years ago that we would have a mental health clinician and a recovery coach on board, I wouldn't have believed you, but we do. So when new issues in society pop up, we tend to be the go-to agency. We have to be the problem solvers. And so there'll be issues that come up in the future that we haven't even predicted yet. But we'll have the space to grow into that. And that's a huge bonus. And that's what the town has been missing, what the police department's been missing for a long time, is which we have not had space. If you saw my PowerPoint presentation at town meeting, I showed that there was only a gain of 592 square feet during the public safety building project in 2003. The majority, 90% of that project was the fire side of the building. Only 10% was the police side. And 592 square feet just wasn't going to cut it. So it's great to be getting what we need. I'm thankful to the people of the town for supporting the project. And it's a great move for the town overall.
I know as someone who spends a couple nights a month in the community room you have, when we're doing parade stuff, we often meet in your building, and we'd be in our meeting and someone would knock on the door and ask us for help. We have to tell them there's a black phone over there, pick it up. And one night there was a health emergency in the parking lot, and someone had to call an ambulance. And of course, the fire department is up at the top, and you've got to pick the phone up. So to have an officer down there is going to be a great improvement.
And we
the presence.
So as somebody who goes in the lobby all the time, you've seen the mishmash of signs that are up on the walls and the doors.
It's a little confusing for people.
It can be confusing, but the reason all those signs are there is because it just seems like no matter how many signs we have up, it's not enough. People still can't find the phone. A lot of the times the officers will see the person walk in the lobby on camera. They'll pick up the intercom and say, pick up the phone. And then you just see them looking around like, where's this telephone you speak of? So it'll be great to just for people to be able to walk in the front door and just see a person. It really will. A lot of times people get frustrated. They come in the lobby and they leave before somebody can get to them to help them. And then we'll get an angry phone call later. Hey, I came in your station and nobody was home. So it's not good for business. We need somebody down there. So thank goodness that problem will be solved.
So right now, the person that picks that phone up, they're on the second floor, right? And they're coming down to you?
Dispatch is, there is a delay. So there's two officers assigned to dispatch. One's a supervisor, one is an officer. So all the 911 calls in Wakefield run through that dispatch center. So there has to be somebody in there at all times. You can't abandon those 911 lines. All the radio calls come in there. All the business lines go into that room. The sergeant, he or she's responsible for running the shift, dealing with prisoners, monitoring the prisoners. So oftentimes they're running back and forth between dispatch and the cell block. So many times there's just one person in that dispatch office. They can't leave. So when that's the case, they'll have to call an officer in off the street. And our town is divided into patrol sectors. So if people are tied up on a call, somebody might have to come from, say, the south end of town. And it could take, depending on traffic, 5 minutes to get there. If it's, obviously if it's a real emergency, they'll lights and sirens back to the station, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. You have to use lights and siren to get back to your own police station, but it's happened. But it could take a few minutes to get back. And to be honest with you, people get frustrated. And they're frustrated to begin with because they've had something happen to them that they need to come to us in the first place. And then they even get more frustrated at the fact that it took 5 minutes for an officer to respond to the lobby of the building. They don't understand that. So right out of the gate, we're at a disadvantage because people are frustrated at us for not being right there to help them.
I'm looking forward to your new building. I think I've sat through 2 presentations on it now, one from your predecessor and of course the one from you a couple of weeks ago. So I personally like the plan. I'm looking forward to seeing it take place.
Yeah, me too. So hopefully when it's done, you'll get a tour.
Well, hopefully I'll still be able to have meetings in there. So we'll see how that plays out.
Exactly.
One thing you had mentioned a little while ago was on the defund the police movement, and the things have been happening since George Floyd. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the George Floyd incident that you'd like to share. I know you spoke to the town council about it a couple months ago now.
It's the whole thing makes me angry, to be honest with you. It should have never happened. Something like that. Here we are, 2020, with all the training that's available. Department's supposed to have policies. That should have never happened. It would never happen in Wakefield. It just wouldn't. I realize, and I tell everybody, that the northeast part of this country in law enforcement is years ahead of the rest of the country. And that was something that I definitely picked up on at the National Academy. Is we're much more advanced than other parts of the country, especially when it comes to training and policies. And we don't train in any kind of tactic that would restrict somebody's airflow. We don't do it. If somebody's asking for help, what we teach our people is that once you put the handcuffs on somebody and they're in custody, you're responsible for their health and well-being. You have to you become their caretaker. So if somebody needs medical attention, you have to provide it. If somebody says, I can't breathe, you have to change what you're doing. You can't continue what you're doing. So, sad, angry. It should have never happened.
I know you had mentioned that you're looking into a kind of a cadet program at the high school to bring kids along. Now, when I was a kid, I had taken courses in DARE, and we had, McGruff the Crime Dog and things like that. And I know a lot of those programs don't exist anymore. So what is the goal to catch, say, the younger kids before they hit high school to know about these problems? Do you have officers in the schools at all at this point?
So we have Officer Kelly Tobine as the school resource officer at the middle school. And I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to meet Kelly.
I have.
But she has this incredible ability to relate to kids. And DARE is a thing of the past. There were studies done that said it didn't work. I think if you kept one kid off of drugs, it did work. That's my belief. But Kelly spends a lot of time with the kids. She teaches a class called Rad Kids, it teaches a lot of different things. It teaches about self-defense. It teaches about how to dial 911. It teaches about what's appropriate and inappropriate. How to talk to an adult about things that might be inappropriate. She teaches a mental health class for students and teachers. She's a phenomenal teacher. She holds classes for teachers. She really knows her material. But her biggest role at the middle school, and really the role that the SROs play at the 2 high schools, Mike Pietrantonio's at the vocational school, and we'll have a new SRO at the high school this year, Matt Malone. Their biggest role is to form relationships with the kids, because usually, or in many cases, the school is a safe place. Sometimes schools can be a safer place than home, depending on if there's some abuse at home. And by establishing relationships with the kids, they're a trusted adult. And that's how we find out about a lot of abuse cases, because our SROs are trusted adults and the kids feel comfortable coming to them with issues that might be going on at home. And it really makes a big difference building those relationships with the kids, with SROs, because they learn that police are good. They feel free to come to other officers for help. They're not afraid to talk to us. Many communities, there's kind of like this standoff, I guess you'd call it, between kids and police officers, where their opinion is formed by what they hear at home, good or bad. Our kids in town have the opportunity to meet a Wakefield police officer and establish a relationship with them. And that's huge. It really is, because it just creates a respect between the police and the kids in town.
One final question for you. I had asked people in town if they had any questions I should ask you. And one thing that came up time and time again was parking. And I know that you were the traffic officer for a while, and the comments I had was the time limits on parking, the people giving tickets now, the two ticket writers that work part-time, parking on the wrong side of the streets, parking at the not a spot in front of the post office where it's got that crosswalk, and then one spot, and then there's that magic one that kind of pops up on the corner. So what is your response to all these parking issues that I'm sure you've dealt with for many years now?
So I've been getting beat up over parking for many years. We would have these parking forums where people could come in and speak, and we'd have one meeting where the police stink because they don't write enough parking tickets, and then we'd have another forum and we'd stink because we wrote too many parking tickets, and we wrote parking tickets over here but we didn't write them over there. And the truth of the matter is, our offices are extremely busy, so one of the most difficult things to do is to write time-restricted parking violations, because you might go to an area that's got a 2-hour limit, you write down all the license plate numbers, but you might never get back there. After you take those license plate numbers down, you might be dealing with 2 traffic accidents you have to write a report on, a domestic, you might be on 2 other calls, and all of a sudden 5 hours went by and now you can't get back there. So it was great that the town agreed to hire some part-time parking enforcement officers. It took us a little while to fill the jobs. It's a very unforgiving job. Some people have some not so nice things to say to them sometimes. So you have to have a thick skin and a strong will to persevere in that job. So we have 2 people that go out there now and they do a great job. So what they concentrate on, obviously, are the business zones, because the whole idea is with the 2-hour time restriction is to create turnover. And I know, so when we first started it, there were a lot of unhappy people. There really were. And our biggest violators were the business owners. They didn't want to have to walk to work. They didn't want to have to park down the street, walk to their shop. So they would park right in front of their neighbor's shop. So the neighbor would park in front of their shop. So that was the biggest challenge, was creating a new mindset and kind of retraining all our business owners to park where we have our business parking areas, our designated business parking areas, and to free up the spaces in the square and down in Greenwood. And change is a very hard thing for people, but once they accept it and they follow the change, it works out well. So after a couple of months went by, we started to really get a lot of compliments from business owners saying, hey, this is really working out great. And we kind of relaxed the restrictions a little bit during COVID because we realized the businesses were hurting. We didn't want to hurt them any worse than they were already hurting. So we really concentrated on the flagrant violations, the ones like you talk about in front of the post office, the people who feel this need to park in the area right under the sign that says no parking near the corner, people parking up on the sidewalk. And so there's a lot of issues with people parking on sidewalks. So we have a lot of multifamilies in town that don't really provide the parking that's necessary for the house. So we try to be lenient. If a car's up on the curb, we won't ticket it. Anything completely blocking the sidewalk, obviously that's an issue. We don't want anybody to have to walk in the street to go around the car, especially a mother pushing a baby carriage. So we make sure those cars are ticketed. It's not rare. It's not often that you find a car parking in the wrong direction. It does happen. We offer resident parking passes now to a lot of the side streets off the square. Pretty soon that will be going electronic with Town Hall. You'll be able to do that all online. So a lot has changed with parking, but it's changed for the better. And a lot of people who were resistant to the enforcement in the beginning have really accepted it. They've complimented it, and it's really helped out. What we hear all the time now is, hey, there's a lot of turnover in the square. I can find a parking spot now when I want to go to Brothers. And that was the goal. The goal wasn't to raise revenue. The goal wasn't to punish people. The goal was to create turnover and create parking, because it's always been a challenge downtown, especially. I won't go on my rant about the parking garage. It would have been nice to have one, but that ship sailed. So it is what it is. But yeah, so we have 2 people, total of 38 hours a week. They mix up their hours each day just to keep people on their toes, and it seems to work.
And my last question for you is, what has your favorite experience been in your time as a police officer? In all these years, what do you think it's been?
I got to be honest. In 2003, myself and 2 officers, Bill Dalton, who's retired, and Janine Smith, who was a police officer in Wakefield, we started a self-defense class for women called RAD. It stands for Rape Aggression Defense. We started teaching that in 2003. The position was advertised within the department. I read the job description. I'm like, that sounds interesting. I'll give it a try. Never in a million years did I think I would be as passionate about it as I became. It's a self-defense class for women. It's 4 days. It's 12 hours. And until you teach the class and you see how the transformation that people go through from being unsure of their own abilities to protect themselves to the last night when we put people to a simulated exercise and the confidence that they have, you feel like a proud parent, to be honest with you. And it's not all physical stuff. Self-defense is 90% mental. It's 10% physical. So we go over a lot of things where for there to be a crime, we call it a victimization triangle. There has to be a victim, an offender, and opportunity. So what we do is we teach people how to remove themselves, the potential victim, and the opportunity from that triangle. And if you lose one side, you can't have a crime. So we spend a lot of time in the 90% of self-defense, and then we spend 10% on the physical. And a lot of people are just unsure of their own physical abilities. But once we teach them a few moves and we put them through a simulated exercise and they see what they're capable of doing. So after that simulated exercise, we keep people around for a little while. We give them some pizza. We give them relax because we don't want them to go out from where we have the training and tune anybody up. But it's we've had people from the ages of 13 to 82 take the class. I think I've taught probably close to 500 people, and it's a thrill for me. I feel proud every time I do it. It's one of those things where, I said, you take this job because you want to help people. And, if one person who took that class survives an encounter successfully because it took that class, then that's a win for us. And that's why we do it. So that's, out of all the things I've done, I've had an opportunity to do a lot of things in this job, a lot of exciting things, but that's the most meaningful to me.
Well, it's great to talk to you tonight. Thank you for joining me. I hope to see you around town when it's safer.
Yeah, no, hopefully, I don't know how long this pandemic will last, but hopefully it disappears as fast as it showed up.
Sounds good. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.